Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Mahaganadipate Namo Namaha Om Namo Narayanaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namah Shivaya Om Shri Swaminarayanaya Namo Namaha Shri Hari Krishna Maharajaya Namo Namaha Shri Ghanasham Maharajaya Namo Namaha Om Shri Sadgurubhyo Namo Namaha. Welcome to SwaminarayanSpirituality.com. This is Sachin. Today is the 23rd of November 2023. I want to offer my prostrations to Bhagavan Shri Swaminarayan, Hari Krishna Maharaj, Ghansham Maharaj, the Paramahansas of Bhagavan Swaminarayan, to all the great sages present today and in the various paramparas in the Swaminarayan Sampradaya, to all the great devotees, bhaktas, mumukshus, sadhaks, everybody, please accept my most humble prostrations at everyone's feet. With this prarthana, we are continuing our further exposition on the question of Maya as raised by Shri Govardhan Bhai, who is a devotee of Shriji Maharaj. So along those lines, continuing from yesterday, I have been referencing various different external websites and other ideas for our exposition here. And in the free online app that is available by the BAPS organization, they have written footnotes and their own explanations on various words and phrases in Vachanamrut and Swaminivato. So along those lines, I'm continuing further from yesterday, where the commentators have talked about what is meant by a bhakta, who is considered to be the devotee of God, Bhagavano Bhakta. So please remember, anytime Gujarati lines come, which they will, I will do my 100% best to translate it as accurately as possible. If you have any comments or questions or any suggestions for further changes or better translations, please do let me know. I would be happy to hear from you. Okay, so in the question, let's just do a quick review. The question by Govardhan Bhai is as he says, Jene Bhagwan ni Maya kahe che, tenu roop shu che. What is the form of Maya? How can we understand Maya? How can we see what is Maya? You know, as I mentioned in some past recordings about the word roop here, it's a very appropriate word because we want to see Maya as it is. Recognize it completely in its real form and identify with God completely and not with the form of Maya. Form of Maya meaning the obstructions that Maharaj is talking about. Shriji Maharaj's answer is extremely powerful. It's a super powerful one-line answer, and that is what we are slowly, carefully opening up. So Maharaj answered this way, Pachi Shriji Maharaj bole je, Bhagwan no bhakta hoy, tene Bhagwan ni murti nu dhyan karta, je padarth adu avine avran kare, tene Maya kahiye. The answer is that when a devotee is engaged in dhyan, meaning meditation, on the murti, the form, the sakar form of Bhagavan, all the obstructions, whether they're internal, external, any kind of obstruction, je padarth meaning objects. But the objects are external and they're internal also. So je padarth adu avine avran kare. Adu means here that they are coming as obstructions. So it means vignarup. In the commentary or in the footnote in the BAPS app, it says here ahi adu etle vacche antaray tarike vignarup. They put several words here. Adu meaning that which comes in between. Like if you're trying to see an object outside, like let's say you're in a very beautiful park and there's a tree, and you're trying to see the tree, but somebody stands in between, or some animal comes in between. So that object that has come in between prevents you from seeing the tree. It's like that. So adu etle vache, like it's come in between. Vache means comes in between. Antaray tarike. Antaray. This is an interesting word that they have used. Antaray means that it is an internally generated obstruction. Antar means internal. This is just my understanding of that word. If you have a better understanding or more clear one, I'd love to hear from you. Antaray tarike. Tarike means like any things that are coming from internally within our mental system that are obstructing this fantastic dhyan. So that's another meaning of this word adu. So this is the old Maharaj used that word, but the commentators have elaborated on that. And vignarup. Vignarup means that which is causing obstacle. Vigna means obstacle. So vignarup meaning it is an obstacle in our goal. We have a goal. What is the goal? That is to reach God, or to let's say that we want to please God. Bhagvat prasannata, that is the goal. We want to be in connection, in communion with God, with Ishta Devata. So Bhagavan meaning the supreme being beyond Akshara Brahma. That is what Bhagavan, the word Bhagavan means here. You see, so that once the goal is set by the devotee, we want to be in that fantastic state, then these recognitions of these obstacles is the key. Now Maharaj also uses the word avran in the answer. So avran, in Vedanta, avran is it is a covering. The word avran means covering. You see, so our mind itself is a covering for the Atma and for Brahman, for Akshara Brahman, Para Brahman. It's all in us, it's internally, not like physically, but it's internally, subtly. So the Atma and the Paramatma exist as the witnessing consciousness within us, or we have to use that language, but it's not really within us as such. This body is an experience for the Atma. So from a physical body point of view, we can say the Atma is inside the heart. Shriji Maharaj has also mentioned that the Atma exists inside the heart. There's a physical heart, and that is the location, Mausnu Chakra, he's mentioned it that way. And that is where, the physical organ of the heart is there, and the Jivatma resides in that location. But that's a more physical way to describe it, because we need some physicality to understand. That is why Maharaj is putting it that way. And that is also true from our physical level point of view. But from the Atma point of view, the body is an experience for the Atma. It's the experience of life and death and all the experiences of the body, all of them. These are experiences for the Atma. This is called Jivnu Anvay Swarup. So Anvay Vyatirik Garada Pratham 7 does discuss that point in more detail. We will talk about that some other time. I don't want to go into too much of that right now. So Maharaj is talking about Avaran. To recognize internally, the bhakta has to recognize this is my obstacle that is coming up. And when one recognizes the obstacle, what does one do? One recognizes the obstacle and doesn't give any more fuel, any more thought, any more emotion, any more attention to that. This is the key. This is where the problems of spiritual progress, or progress in life also in general, are present here. We're giving so much attention to things that don't need attention. Yes, we need to understand the content of our consciousness, the content of our mind. We can see it, examine it, choicelessly be aware of it, even analyze it to a certain extent. But then what? For example, I'm going to draw a couple of examples from the clinical field in psychology, psychotherapy. Somebody who is very depressed, let's say, or has some kind of trauma. That trauma is held inside the mind. But when one sees that trauma, sees that memory, and says that that's not me. I'm not that memory. I'm not that trauma. Who am I? I am Akshara Brahma. I am Atma. I am divinity. So that realization that I am the Brahman is facilitated by dhyana. And the dhyan here is not an escape. And that's why Shriji Maharaj is saying Murti Nu Dhyan, to prevent the phenomenon of escape. Many times people meditate, even in nature or other places, because they're having so much disturbance inside their psychological system, they need some relief. Okay, that has benefit, no doubt. Nature meditations. People take medications also. All kinds of antidepressants and mood stabilizers and so many things are there that act directly on the brain, because that is a way of reducing the onslaught of the dysphoric emotion, dysphoric state, the imbalanced state. So Shriji Maharaj is actually giving a direct solution here. Yes, those other things like nature meditation, nature walks, whatever it is. So many of those types of meditations are there. Medications are countless. They are temporary means that can be helpful at times. If somebody really needs to do that, they can do that. Fine, it is what it is. But Maharaj is talking about dhyan. Murti Nu Dhyan. This is the heart of the whole matter. Bhagavat Murti, Bhagavan ki Murti. And that is where joy comes from. God, meaning Bhagavan, meaning Paramatma, meaning Parabrahma. Aksharatit, jo Akshara Brahma se bhi par hai. The Parat Par, Purna Purushottam, Parabrahma Paramatma. That one singular tattva is Anandakanda. Anandakanda. The root from which the root from which Ananda comes. The Atma is Ananda, the Akshar is Ananda, the Akshardham is Ananda. But the Akshardhami, the Lord residing inside the Akshardham, that Paramatma is the source of Ananda. Right? So when we are meditating, doing dhyan of Bhagavan, Bhagwan no bhakta hoy tene Bhagwan ni murti nu dhyan karta. Murti nu dhyan in Gujarati means the dhyan of the murti. What are we doing dhyan generally? We are doing meditation, we may not call it that, on the content of the mind. This happened to me, and this happened, and that happened, and this happened, and this happened. And these objects, and these experiences, and person, places, things, experiences. So much clutter is there. The Antakarana is filled with content. That content is going to remain. But to not get affected by that content, meaning the Atma Tattva not getting bound by that content, is the goal, is one of the intermediate goals. And Murtinu Dhyan, the Dhyan of Paramatma, without any kind of obstruction, when we reach that stage of Dhyan without any obstruction, that dhyan, what does it do? It absolutely brings the presence of the Lord within the mind. This is called Mano Pratishta, Mansik Pratishta of Murti. Bhagvat Pratishta, we talk about Murti Pratishta, Pratishtapanam Vidhi is done when Mandir is built. We ourselves have to build our own Mandir. This is where the Gurus come into the picture. By the grace of Maharaj, in the Swaminarayan Sampradaya today, there are so many paramparas, so many different gurus, so many different ways of exposition, fantastically done. My hats off, my pranams, my Danvat pranams to all the great sages who have taken the time selflessly to put on YouTube and on their websites and other places. They have opened up this Brahma Vidya completely for the whole world. Fantastic. They have not kept it in a seclusionary format. Most of the material is on YouTube, which is so fantastic. Freely for everybody. Jene joye te avo moksha magavare lol. It's a beautiful bhajan. Whoever wants moksha, come and take it. If you want moksha, it is freely available. That is the beauty of the Swaminarayan Sampradaya. Knowledge is not hidden. Knowledge is not sectioned off. Knowledge is not restricted to a few. It's open for all. Those who are thirsty to drink, the water is available. It is that is the beauty. There are some other organizations that restrict Jnana. Okay, whatever they're doing, that is up to them. We're not finding anybody's fault. You just go to some place, watch a video. You're not allowed to write anything, or not allowed to record anything. They don't publish you have to just. There's some organizations they are very restrictive. That is how they're doing. Nothing. That's up to them. They want to do that way. But from a Vedic point of view, that is anti-Vedic. That is not pure Adhyatma, to restrict divine knowledge. Anybody who restricts divine knowledge is that is Maya. That is obstruction right there. That is what Maharaj is saying also. You cannot restrict knowledge. Restrict bhajans, kirtans. Now because of technology, the grace of Bhagwan Swaminarayan is such, all of the organizations have put massive amounts of material online for everybody to see. No doubt it is in Gujarati for the most part. That is why Sachin, as a small seva, is trying to translate these things into English and all. But that is just a seva, that is Bhagwan ki ichha. But the general idea is knowledge cannot be restricted. It is the greatest sin to restrict knowledge. Ek mahapap chhe, in Gujarati we would say, ke gnan ni sankuchitta rakhvi. So it is totally anti-Vedic, anti-Upanishadic, anti-scriptures to restrict divine knowledge in any format. Right? Okay. So having said that, we don't want to go too much into those things. We wind up taking somebody's fault. So we don't want to find any fault, but we also want to be very clear what is really in the scriptures and how evolution occurs further. Knowledge restriction, any kind of restriction on spiritual path that prevents people from gaining the information they need, that should not be there. That is our prayer, at least. Okay. Having said that, let's move forward from where we were last time. It's very fascinating. There are a lot of points to cover here. Last time we were talking about mumukshutvam. There were several points here, and there were 3 points. I'm just looking that up again. Yes, that is ashraya, mumukshutvam, and sadhana. Right? So the ashraya swarup is what? Ashraya is developing qualities like humility, devotion, unconditional love, that are essential for spiritual advancement. That is taking the shelter of, surrendering at the feet of God. What are we surrendering? The false identification and the ego. The surrendering of the me is the diminishing of the ego and the diminishing of the false identification of the body and the mind, which leads to greater realization of the true self, the Atma Tattva. And this is integral in opening up the quality of mumukshutvam. Mumukshuta is the intense power to mumukshuta is the desire for being liberated. So there's a lot of emphasis, by the way, on the scriptures in Hindu scriptures, particularly Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita. They emphasize mumukshuta and ashraya. They often describe the journey of a seeker from being entangled in worldly desires to develop mumukshuta, and then progress towards liberation through the practice of ashraya. Right? So mumukshutvam is the beginning, the wanting of liberation, and then that leads to ashraya. And in that ashraya, there is great surrender at the feet of the Lord. Now, let's take this a bit further. So, understanding mumukshutva a little bit further. Mumukshuta or mumukshutvam refers to the intense longing or desire for liberation, which is moksha. Liberation from what? From the cycle of birth and death. Does the cycle exist? Every acharya has mentioned that it exists based on their realizations. So we have to assume that it is there. We would assume that that's the case. And we want freedom from that cycle. So, mumukshuta is a state of being, state of living, where an individual becomes keenly aware of the transient nature of worldly pleasures. Transient nature of worldly pleasures and worldly experiences. It is transient, anitya. It is fleeting. Like in Gujarati we say, Chiye thoda divasana mehman, Jivan thodu rayu, Kaika atmanu karilo kalyan, Jivan thodu rayu. It's a beautiful bhajan. Tame bhave bhajilo bhagavan, Jivan thodu rayu. This is Gujarati, very famous bhajan. And you can look it up also. And it just means that life is temporary. This little bit of life is left. What we're wasting our time for in these transient things, running after madly, foolishly. How much we keep running? To what extent? Right? So it's a realization, it's a keen realization. That is pure mumukshutva, highly keen. Keen meaning infused with intelligence. It is a keen realization of the transient nature of all worldly experiences. And with that realization opens up the deep yearning for spiritual freedom and realization of Brahma Parabrahma, Atma Paramatma. The development within the mind of deep yearning for spiritual liberation, this is a medicine. People talk about psychotherapy, self-therapy, and so many things are there. Therapy is there, right? This is a therapy. What else is it? It is the highest of therapies. When this yearning opens up, one has automatically the intelligence of the content of one's own mind, the limitations, all kinds of fantastic awakening of intelligence is present. Because one can see the structure of the mind. One can see the content of the mind. One can see the dimensions, depth, structure, function, quantity, quality, all such things related to the mind. It is a perception. And in that perception, and perception that this content is also transient, in the depth of perception, as Shriji Maharaj calls that, Janpanu, awareness, Janpanarupi darwaje ubharevu. That's the doorway of awareness that is talked about in Vachanamrut. I think it's maybe Garada Ante 9, if I'm not mistaken. 6 or 9, which are one of those. Amazing. That's absolutely mind-boggling what can happen here. It's not mind-boggling, it is mind-freeing. It is the freedom from the inside out that awakens naturally by the perception of transience, by the transient nature of worldly pleasures and experiences. So many experiences are there, they're not all pleasurable, obviously. There are pleasurable ones, there are harmful ones, there are entangled ones, there are, all kinds of experiences, likes and dislikes, and pains and suffering, and sukh and dukh, all the dualities. The dvanda titam gagana sadrusham tattvamasyadi laksham. See this verse, what it says. You're beyond the dualities. So this dhyan Shriji Maharaj is referring to here, Bhagavat dhyan, Bhagwan ka dhyan, Bhagwan na swarup ma akhanda vritti. That akhanda vritti dhyan, there is no sadhana greater than that, as was said in the previous paragraph, and there is no great state of realization than that. Also, Maharaj said, just a quick reference, he says, Bhagavan na swarupma manni akhand vritti rakvi, tethi koi kathand sadhan pan nathi, ane tethi koi moti prapti pan nathi. Wow. Amazing. There is no higher achievement than akhand vritti. When a devotee goes after akhand vritti with prarthana, with mumukshutvam, with ashray, with dhyan of the murti, with great glory of the ekantik saints and sages, mahima, mahatmya of the state of 64 qualities of saints. How can any foolish thing of this world ever contaminate the heart of a devotee? Impossible. This world becomes shunya. The running after these experiences of this world stops. Doesn't mean you're not experiencing the world. We are. As that is available, one is there. One is not concerned with trying to find more and more happiness by expansion of the worldly experiences. This realization of the stopping of the expansion of the worldly experiences is the very foundational realization for mumukshutvam. It is the foundational realization to stop running after the expansion of worldly experience. And that is going to lead to much more awareness of the content of the consciousness, psychological consciousness, and one doesn't run after the content of the psychological consciousness also. This is the highest form of mental therapy. The mind becomes its own therapist by these words of Vachanamrut, by words of the Gita, by inculcating mumukshutvam, inculcating the truths of the fact that things are all temporary and fleeting. When this is internalized, the mind becomes its own therapist. We use the word in Sanskrit that the mind becomes a guru at that point. Guru. Gu is all of that entangled content. Ru is that divine light of the Atma and Paramatma. Through the scriptures, through the words of the Sadgurus. This is Guru. That is Sadguru. And it is along these lines with keeping the goal, the highest goal. What is the highest goal? God. Not wanting something from God. God Himself is the highest goal. Generally we want something from God. That is okay. That is also want something as God. That's fine. Whether He gives you or not, be satisfied with it. Whatever it is. That don't worry about what you get it or not. You can ask everything and then leave it alone. So that is the transition from Sakam Bhakti to Nishkam Bhakti. That transition is important in life. We start with Sakam Bhakti and eventually leave everything at the feet of the Lord. And that is Ashray. He said, I am a child in front of you. I'm at your refuge. I have taken your refuge. So it is surrendering to the Ishta Devata, seeking guidance and protection, as we mentioned yesterday. The devotee, the bhakta cultivates, devotion is cultivated. Trust is cultivated. Trust, meaning I trust, there is trust in the fact that whatever is happening in my life, there is only one being that is doing that is the Lord, and nobody else. That is trust. Amazing. Let's go back to mumukshutvam for a moment. I have a couple of points I want to go over on this today. Again, we could spend years on all of this. This is how you can keep going into this further. But mumukshutvam, of course, is characterized by several key points. As I mentioned some of these already, but I'll just repeat them again, just to make sure we are all together. Even if these things are repeated 1,000 times, it's still okay. Because it doesn't go into our minds like that. Our mind is cluttered, stuck, and absolutely trapped inside its own content as well as inside these worldly experiences. So we want out of that. Now look at how to come out of that through mumukshutvam. And I'm giving this exposition as an expansion on the footnote in the BAPS app for the answer Sriji Maharaj gave. Okay, so mumukshutvam is a central concept in Hindu tradition, symbolizing profound aspiration for spiritual liberation or moksha, right? So there's a great desire for liberation. This state of being emerges when an individual realizes the limitations and impermanence of worldly life. The impermanence, everything is impermanent, point number one. That is, worldly life is sansara. Everything is impermanent. And the limitations, everything is limited. We've talked about that before. I won't go too much into that just right now. But these are the two key points. Now, to expand on this further, awareness of the temporary nature of worldly pleasures. A person with mumukshutva understands that material joys are fleeting and cannot provide lasting satisfaction. When the quality of mumukshutva opens up and develops beautifully within the mind, within the system, a bhakta realizes. It is a state of realization that the material enjoyments are fleeting. They come and go, and they are not permanent, and they cannot provide lasting satisfaction. Purnakam bhav. Shriji Maharaj is very clear. He says, Purnakam bhav ma apne javanu chhe. Lasting. What we want in life is lasting satisfaction. And that lasting satisfaction comes from the dhyan of murti. Dhyan of the murti, the physical 8 forms of murti. The scriptures are also called murti. The enlightened sages are also called murti because of their state of realization. So God is within them. keeping them inside of us, that is called Murti Nu Dhyan. Simple and straightforward. Straightforward understanding of what is Murti. Murti are 8 forms of Murti. And then the scriptures, they are also Murti Madhavani Madhurupam. Then the saints, they are also Murti, sages. And everything that obstructs in connection with God, in connection with the Murti, this is Maya. That obstruction is Maya. Right? So, Shriji Maharaj is saying to recognize the obstruction and to recognize that these mumukshutvam qualities are necessary. So anyway, let's go back into this. So a person with mumukshutva, a person who has mumukshutva, there is a clear understanding of the temporary, fleeting, ephemeral nature of all material experiences, and they cannot provide lasting satisfaction. They never can. Although we need the objects to survive, we need them within a certain range. That much is okay. Beyond that, Gunatitanand Swami has mentioned કે બધું ફેલ છે, ખાવા ન મળે અને ખાવાનું ન પચે અને સ્વાદમાં બધે મીઠું. He's explaining simple Gujarati village type language. You know, that we need very little in life actually. But what we need a lot of is satsang. Bahut kaal karat satsang. We want oceanic satsang. And these material things, we keep that automatically will remain within a range because of its limitations. This realization comes, this mumukshutvam, this realization of this ephemeral temporary nature comes after experiencing and observing the ephemeral nature of life's pleasures and pains. Let's go into that a bit. It is observation and experience of the ephemeral, E-P-H-E-M-E-R-A-L. Ephemeral, that's how it is pronounced. Ephemeral nature. Temporary nature. Realization. The pleasures and pains are all temporary. This body is temporary. This is a realization. It's not just words. Sachin is speaking for Sachin, not for anybody else. If somebody listens to this, and if it is beneficial, that is by the will of Shriji Maharaj. That's all, nothing other than that. Sachin has nothing to do with anybody understanding this or not. This is for Sachin only. For this mind only. Okay, that's the first point. Awareness of temporary nature or worldly pleasure. Second point, yearning for spiritual liberation. There is a conscious desire to transcend the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Shriji Maharaj has mentioned this in Loya 2. In Loya 2, there are 4 points he has mentioned about akhanda vritti, and the cycle of birth or death is mentioned here, that one gets afraid of getting stuck back into this lakh chaurachi, getting into the animal life forms and other human life forms, and not to take any of these forms at all. You know, so we can use our body and bring about a profound yearning for spiritual realization, so one doesn't get caught inside the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. So the yearning for spiritual liberation is seeking for permanent bliss, ananda, and spiritual enlightenment. That is the murti that Maharaj is talking about. That is yearning for spiritual realization. Now, another point here for mumukshutvam. Central to mumukshutvam is the journey inward. It's recognizing one's true nature beyond the physical and mental constructs. There are many mental constructs. Our mind has constructed all kinds of things. We have dislike for some. We have worries about the future. We are stuck about something that happened in the past. None of that becomes of significance at all when one tries to realize the self with the capital S. So central to mumukshutvam is the journey inward. It's a genuine journey. It's not just a lip service. Right? So when one begins this journey internally, there is a recognition of the true nature of oneself beyond the physical constructs and the mental constructs. Mental constructs are present. Physical constructs are also there. What are physical constructs? The hands, the physical form of the body is considered, it's a construct. It's a a creation inside the brain that this is my body. A lot of research is done on that. So yes, that is needed, that is there. But that's not me, really. I am the Atma Tattva. So one can take the journey inward by purifying the mind, attaching the mind in dhyan. And see, this is the whole point. This journey inward is exactly what Shriji Maharaj is referring to. Because in the dhyan of Murti, the Murti is outside to begin with. But then it comes inside. Slowly, 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 you bring it inside of yourself. So the distance between you and the Murti closes. This is the whole point of spiritual realization, is to close the distance between you and God. The Bhakta and the Bhagwan are in relationship with each other, and relationship is established. And then gradually this distance is closed by dhyan. You see, so closing that distance by dhyan, as we said before, it is a state where one is absorbed, meaning the vritti is gotten enmeshed in, absorbed inside that murti that is of Bhagavan. Remember the footnote that we looked at some recordings back? In that footnote, the commentators have written, Ahi dhyan etle je vastuni dharana karvama ave. So, meaning what dhyan of who? In this case, it is the Murti of God. Tej vastuma prayatna vinaj vrittiyoni ekakarta. Without effort, the vrittis are just linked there. Without any effort. That is dhyan. You see, so now that happens in bhajan, kirtan, manan, chintan. In every action, it is possible to reach a stage of dhyan where 24 hours one is linked with Ishta Devata. It is possible. But it's not something that can just happen just like that. It takes its own time. It takes its own, this is the sadhana. The Akhanda Vritti sadhana is the only real sadhana. All the other sadhanas are in that. So when we try to establish an unbroken link with the Lord, then in that attempt, we can reach the stage of dhyana. So dharana is the previous stage. So we talked about that a bit before. We're going to go into that again, about the Ashtanga Yoga and where dhyan fits in there. We will definitely do that in subsequent recordings. Today I wanted to focus more on this mumukshutvam and ashraya and all these other ideas. So we'll stop here for now. We'll continue along these lines further in terms of the yearning for spiritual realization, the role of mumukshutvam, the surrender, the path of surrender. There's so much to be said. Ashraya and divine grace, mumukshutva and personal aspiration, dynamic balance. These are all areas that I want to cover as a further elaboration of the footnote, to the one-line fantastic answer by Bhagwan Swaminarayan Shriji Maharaj. Sajananda Swami Maharaj ki Jai.